We completed the basic foundation for Reputation late last year, and followed that up in the first quarter with the release of the Delphi Mobiglass app that allows you to see exactly how different NPCs and organizations feel about you. This is a critical system within the game because it's the key mechanism by which you'll unlock more challenging and lucrative opportunities and gain access to organizations and areas that will bestow various benefits. We're still missing a few key pieces of the puzzle though, and can't yet fully exploit this system. So over on the mission side, only the bounty hunting services give you a nice gradation of challenges at the moment, offer you more interesting missions as you gain reputation with them. Can you go into a little bit of detail about why this is?
Essentially, whenever we want to make a new mission, or even just a very small variant on a mission, it requires an entirely new record, a new chunk of data that we have to put into the system, and that takes time. To build out any kind of ladder is an awful amount of time, honestly. Some things that we want to do is just kind of make it so that some of that is more systemic and a little bit faster, and by doing that we will be able to kind of explode wide, making it so that we make one mission, one template, and then just give it some variables that have some ranges. And by doing so, we can then allow it to almost generate its own chains of missions with difficulties that are driven by how much reputation you have, and those can give you different amounts of rewards and spawn different amounts of enemies and put things at different distances, etc. Just kind of dynamicizing that mission variation.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot to this, a lot of additional complication besides the mission itself, because when you think about it, you may have a mission giver, and the mission giver looks at your reputation and decides that he's only going to give you the junior starter missions. And so he calls up the, go kill bad guys in this particular section, and he basically says, you know what, given your reputation, I'm going to assume that you can only take, a difficulty value of 1. And passing a difficulty value of 1 into that mission will only create 1 or 2 guys, and your reward will be of a considerably lower rate than it would, than what it might otherwise be. As you do that mission, you build up reputation with him. All of a sudden, he's passing, higher difficulty levels into that mission template. And one of the complicating factors that we face is we need to be able to take this template, and before we've actually instantiated it, before you've actually accepted it, we need to be able to extract information out of it and process that. What I mean by that is we need to know, before we've created the mission, how much money you should reasonably be paid in order to do this. And we need to know, if we need to have a sense of where this mission might actually take you and what the current status of that area is. Or is he sending you into an area rife with pirates, or is he sending you into an area that's got tons of security and it's the safest thing in the world?
Or an active supernova, or like any number of things that are terrifying to go.
And this is part of the reason why we've actually made some significant progress on this particular problem, but there are multiple facets to dealing with it. And I'd actually say that at this point, we're in a relatively good place on the on the underlying, the dynamic mission side, and we've still got a considerable amount of work to do over on the actual UI side to take a mission template, look at your reputation, create some proxy references to that mission template with different metadata associated, and then assuming that you actually select option number 3, which has metadata this, then we'll instantiate the mission, pass in the metadata so that it actually customizes it as appropriate for the selection that you were just shown, and you can then go off and execute that mission, and you'll be paid the correct amount, and you'll encounter the appropriate amount of difficulty for for what you were promised and for what he thought you were capable of doing given your reputational level.
Because we already do have in-game something that players can kind of play with right now, the bounty hunter chain, which is effectively what this will look like to players. It's just a matter of that took a lot of setup, and now it should be something that we can pretty much like click a few buttons and we're good to go.
That's exactly like in the end, it's all about allowing you to as quickly and easily express a solution to the problem of, I've got a mission giver. This mission giver is going to dispatch you to deal with with bad guys. The variables wind up becoming, well, how many bad guys and how quickly are they going to reinforce themselves, and are they going to be are they going to be flying capital ships or little small hornets, and what kind of stuff will they have on board, and in what areas of the solar system will this conflict be taking place? So these are all things that we can bend as appropriate depending upon what what we think you're capable of, or what that NPC would theoretically think you're capable of.
Yeah. Well, and we talked a little bit about the procedural character generation in the last USPU sync that we did for Star Citizen Live, but that's going to be taken into account. The back end is going to be generating more and more difficult NPCs based on the gear, based on the quality of the stuff that they can do, their behaviors. So all that needs to get fed into the mission and become part of how we reward the players and enhance that experience. But these are all things that are going to be fed into the mission instead of just the static data that we kind of have right now.
Like you literally have to place nodes in the mission script logic that says like spawn this kind of thing if we roll this, and this kind of thing if we do that. And it's just, it's
just time. And this is all data that we, as long as we can get it up front, we can pass that into the mission ahead of time and actually show that in the mission right up. You know, it's like, here's a mission that's going to take you here, who's offered by this guy. Here's general
expect
rewards.
a medium level of resistance or this many hazards or...
Yeah, fundamentally, that's why reputation is so important. Is it's your...
I would say us see how good you are.
It's the single most important means of progression within the game. Clearly, you can basically upgrade your character by buying different ships. You can customize your ships. You can buy different armor and weapons for your character. But in terms of granting you membership within an organization or access to areas with more or less hostility, depending upon which organization you're a member of and what your reputation is within there and how this character responds to you and whether they give you the the super challenging and lucrative missions or the super easy things that basically just have you doing piddly little stuff that anyone can accomplish because they don't yet know you and don't yet trust you. That's what the reputation system is all about. We completed the, as I said earlier, the basic system last year. We incorporated the reputational logic into the subsumption, mission and AI language. We got the Delphi app so that you can actually see what your standing is with all these different NPCs and organizations. The one piece, the key piece of the puzzle that we're still missing is the ability of the mission system to basically, one, have the mission templates created that actually take these inputs and then be able to feed them in and have it customize itself as appropriate. And related to that is, and it's no small challenge. It is going to be a fair bit of work to adapt the UI to actually allow for this. And that's just on a brief aside, one of the big tasks remaining on the USPU group for next year is going to be refactoring the entire mission interface and converting it from the old Flash tech to the building blocks tech. And that's one of the reasons why we made some forward progress on this, and then we kind of waited because anything that we would have done over on the Flash side would have been throwaway work. And so we made the decision to basically wait to complete the last 25% of this particular puzzle until we had the correct UI foundation in place, which ultimately, A, it'll make it much easier to implement these changes that I'm talking about, and B, we're not going to have to design it, throw it away, and then design it again.
And it doesn't mean that the players won't be able to experience those changes in the game without the UI, right? That'll still be there, but we'll be able to present that and give you a better indication of how the mission is going to play out or what you're going to get as a result of the mission with the new UI.
And also to show you, missions that you don't have the reputation for.
Right, exactly.
It's weird that how important that is, but it actually is vital that you be able to see, hey, I'm not actually with these people. They don't know that I'm that good of a cargo hauler, so they're not going to give me this super difficult cargo hauling mission.
You got to know what you're striving towards too,
Exactly.
as well, right? It's like I want to get better at this. I want to do missions with these guys because that's going to push me to go and get that one right there. That offers this much extra reward or this membership here.
And I don't want to go into this. I just mean this is a topic for another day. But I was just going to briefly mention orgs, perks, benefits. So we're talking about reputation, and you can see your standing with with different organizations, with players, and we will at some point next year start to move forward with. When I say orgs, perks, benefits, you guys know what I'm talking about, which is basically all of the benefits that may, that may be conveyed upon you just as a result of being within this organization or having a certain level of stature within this organization. This may be anything from expedited, ship deliveries. After your ship gets blown up, you don't have to basically, pay a fee to basically, get it as quickly as possible. That's automatically covered. You may get, discounted prices at certain shops. You may, simply not get a hostile response from pirates in this area if you're a member of, of the Pirates Guild and things of that sort. And so this plays into what we're talking about here because you're able to look at an organization, you're able to understand what kind of benefits it conveys to, its most exalted members, and then you can decide whether or not you want to basically try to increase your ranks, within there. And in terms of doing that, the challenge is simply having enough mission variety and diversity to enable the player to feel, hey, I started out, he didn't trust me, he gave me, the real simple, not particularly lucrative mission, and I've been working on this for days and days and days, and I've been moving up in terms of the difficulty that I faced, in terms of the reward that I was offered, and finally I got to the promised land, and now I basically, have membership within the organization, and now I can basically go to Grim Hex and have no concern that, the local, pirate organization is basically going to assault me.
Turrets aren't going to shoot at you, etc.
And importantly, like, that is something that makes your character unique. In an MMO, it's very important that you bring something to the table that other members of your friend group might not have, frankly, or your organization. You have to come in and say, hey, I actually have access to this really cool mission or this really cool thing, and by doing that, I can make things cooler for my group, and we encourage that community play that is so vital.
Yeah, that actually brings to mind, right now we've historically had this faction system that we use to determine hostility. It's always been one of these systems that we know we're going to change it. We know that it's not sufficient, for where we're eventually going. It's never been a high enough priority. We're getting to the point where we're going to have to resolve this because the rest of the game is getting complex enough to where it's really starting to fray at the seams. So earlier this year we released the Xenothreat mission, and that was still entirely based upon the faction system of hostility, and that imposed a serious limitation in that while players could join up and basically fight on the side of the UE and try to repel the Xenothreat invaders, there was no real officially sanctioned means of you joining the side of the bad guys, the Xenothreat. You could go shoot the players that were supporting the UE. You could shoot the UE itself. You could get a crime stat, but the Xenothreat would still view you as hostile. They would still engage you, still try to kill you, etc. This was something that we got right up to the very end with Ninetales, and it was driving you and I crazy.
Yes.
And we wanted to fix it, and we put in what equates to, I'd say, it's a temporary hack to where what we can effectively do is allow a faction to override its normal, dislike of someone in another faction based upon whether or not they have a particular mission token in their inventory.
Well, it's if they're doing a certain mission at this time. And that is honestly not how we want to do this.
100%. So in this particular case, if you accept the support Ninetales mission,
suddenly everyone
then
flips.
they would normally view you as hostile, but because you're holding that that token, that mission reference, they'll go ahead and grant you an exemption. But this is it is clumsy. It was viewed as a very temporary solution. The long-term solution that we've always discussed is going to a more reputational based hostility system. Can you go into a little bit of detail about why that's so important and what kind of additional things we'll be able to support in the future when we have such a more flexible system?
Sure. I mean, the why it's important is fairly obvious. Like, if I have to make sure that you have a certain mission in order to do something, then I can't say, for instance, you can't go to Grimhex. I'm sorry, you're on the side of the police. Like, they will shoot you. That is a problem. No, right now, like, they are actually just civilians, so that they don't care, essentially. If it's reputation, it's something that persists. It doesn't matter if you have a mission or not. You have done something that has made these people like or dislike you, and no matter where you go and what you do, unless that changes, they are going to attack you or not attack you, and you can kind of count on that.
Well, your actions have an impact on how the world perceives you, right?
Yep.
And it's especially important, like as we go into Pyro, as there's multiple factions that are kind of at war with each other out there. We want the players to be able to get in good with one or the other.
Exactly.
So it's a change that we know we need to make, and I think it's really going to take shape and form as we go into Pyro, because UE in Stanton is a pretty binary thing. There's little pockets of pirates, but it's not like Pyro, where it's going to have like these very distinct groups that are kind of warring with each other, and the reputation system is perfect for that.
It will allow us to open up also just like an entire branch of content. Like, we don't really have missions where you work with criminals for the criminals. There's nothing that really makes you a long-term criminal player. Your crime stat can be wiped. You can kind of, get rid of that source. It's not something that I am a criminal player and I log in and I'm going to do these kinds of things. I'm going to be on this side of things. These people hate me. These people love me. That allows you to define your character. That allows you to define your play style. That allows you to define where you're going to do and what you're going to do in the game. The entire game shifts if you have the ability to say.
I would say it's much more like the real world, where it's the concept of what hostility, it eventually equates to binary. Either I engage you, either I attack you, or I do not. But in between, there's literally just a sea of grays in terms of this organization hates that one, this one likes this one, this one doesn't like this one's neutral towards that one, etc. And you wind up having inevitably some sort of unique mixture of all of these different things. And so in the end, we will prioritize these things and determine it's like, oh, well, you're a member of the walk old ladies across the street. Well, I like that. Oh, but you're also a member of the Pirates Guild. I really hate that. So even though I like that one, I'm still going to attack you. And so it's much more flexible in terms of determining all of these complex relationships that players are eventually going to instill upon their characters. Like, it's not going to be either I'm left faction or right faction. It's like there's going to be lots and lots of different organizations, lots of different NPCs, and your standing with those will be all over the map. Some players will be in really good standing with this. Some players, will be really low on this other one. And the level of variability that we'll be able to support with the reputation system is just going to be far, far superior to what we have now.